All right, we're 16 minutes into this podcast, and we can't waste any more time. We got to get into what people are here for and what they've
The
known us
Falcons.
for the
We're
most
talking about the
part.
Falcons. We're talking about the Falcons.
Definitely got to get to the Falcons. But listen, we got to get to the Bears. And this is going to be an interesting little discussion. The Bears brought in Colston Loveland from the Michigan Wolverines. There was a lot of discussion as far as people, draft prognosticators, talking about Ty Warren from the Penn State Nittany Lions. It's funny, last time I saw James, the question he asked me was a lot of people are talking about Ty Warren. What do you think about Colston Loveland? Because James is a Colston Loveland guy. I am a Ty Warren guy. A lot of people were saying that a lot of people have, as far as, I don't want to say traditional with Colston Loveland, because he's much more of a pass catching tight end with the ability to block. And I mean that as a positive, because sometimes you could say that the Bears may have someone who's quote unquote traditional in a Cole Kmet. It's particularly traditional if we're talking like 20 years ago, compared to when pass catching tight ends became more in vogue in the mid to late 90s than what you have now. But you sat there and just, you had Ty Warren, a guy who's kind of more a bull in a china shop, and then you have Colston Loveland, who's viewed much more of a technician and probably a consistent catch radius as far as catching the ball away from the body. Me personally, and it's funny just looking at my text thread with the disappointment that some people have is with Ben Johnson, and me like, well, right now I have to give Tony Gill with the side. I said he had to get a side eye to Ben Johnson because he just doesn't know. For me, and this is one of those things that's funny, and please, both of you get on me. I look at it as far as, Ben Johnson should definitely bring in someone he's familiar with. We know Sam Laporta out of Iowa, the type of player that he was for the Detroit Lions, and how easy it was for him to use. And if you know that this player in Colston is similar to him and you can use him, you should definitely do that. Me, I would hope he's a visionary and he could sit there and say, listen, I can get this Gronk S guy, and I could also do this to him. Now, look, he gets paid a lot of money. I get paid nothing. So he definitely went with who he should probably go. Like, I'm not, this isn't one of those situations. I saw some Bears fans that were at Soldier Field were upset. I don't think you should be upset with the Bears taking Colston Loveland. I mean, once you got to the fact that Will Campbell and Banks were gone, if you're talking about the Bears taking the left tackle, once Banks was gone, and look, I know me and Josh have kind of went back on Banks or whatever, but once Banks was gone, when you're talking about top first round value on left tackle, it was out the building. Ashton Gentry was gone. So the tight ends were probably, when you're talking about Ben Johnson trying to bring in something to help Caleb Williams open up the offense, to also probably not have to, I have to get a third receiver that has to hit. Now you have a situation where your receivers are kind of set in a more reasonable fashion with one and two. And yes, when you look at Rome, he's going to be the two, but it may be a situation where he's kind of the three, with where, depending on the game, where Colston's going to do, and this is, of course, if Colston's playing well and healthy, what Colston's going to do, or what the scheme may be going against the defense that you're going against. That's what I like about it. It opens it up where there's a lot more versatility in the offense. But your thoughts, let's kick it off with you, Josh, with the Bears, one, not getting a tackle if it seems like they were going to get a tackle, and then not going with Warren and going with Colston Loveland over Warren.
Yeah, we'll start with the tackle thing. I would have tried to trade up for a tackle because I think where the Bears find themselves now is kind of where they found themselves after the first round of the Darnell Wright draft, when they didn't have that second round pick and they needed a defensive end, and they were like, wow, there's not going to be any defensive end by the time we pick again. And you look at the available tackles now, there ain't no available tackles, right? They all gone. Josh Connerly back into the first round, Simmons back into the first round. So you've kind of, once again, handcuffed yourself to Braxton Jones in this hope for, one, that he's completely healthy and that he can stay healthy, and that this new staff can get more out of him than Chris Morgan and Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy and Shane Waldron and the cadre of coaches that he's had. But once they decide not to do that, I don't think Warren versus Loveland, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think it's just a flavor answer, right? I think you're getting a guy in Colston Loveland who is a wide receiver in a tight end's body, who's a capable inline blocker, right? He's 21. He's got a slight frame. He's got to fill that out. Great route runner, really good in the middle of the field, seams, comebacks, crosses, all that stuff, right? That's going to help Caleb Williams out a lot to get someone who can really operate in the middle of the field. The kind of weapon that we kind of assumed Gerald Everett / Keenan Allen would kind of be, and that never really materialized. That's what he can be. I think the thing with Colston Loveland is the yak is just, it's pretty non-existent, right? It's a 6.8 missed tackle rate, which is almost subterranean. Like, you force 3 missed tackles. Very good route runner, very fast, creates separation, absolutely making no one miss, right? And Tyler Warren had, I think it was a 22% broken / missed tackle rate, right? That it's Brock Bowers and it's Tyler Warren who do that, right? So it's what do you want? Do you want the guy who's a lateral blocker like Tyler Warren in his own scheme, who was kind of iffy when doing power duo stuff, got pushed around a little bit, but is bigger, right? He's 6'5", he's 260, he can get stronger. His arms can't get longer. He's got 31 3/4 arms. That might be an issue. But you're going to ask Colston Loveland to get bigger and take away his speed. Like, what's the plan, right? I think the Sam Laporta stuff is true, and it's interesting. It's a lofty comp. Sam Laporta is freaking awesome. But if Ben Johnson's sitting there and saying, okay, yeah, Colston, I can split you out by yourself, get a read off the defense, and then we can inform the offense based on that, and we can do similar things, I'm totally fine with that. What I'm really fine with is giving the coach you paid $13 million kind of carte blanche, right? Like, why don't you go pick who you want? We're going to meet all these guys, and if we like Tyler Warren, great. And if you really want Colston Loveland, awesome. That's what we're paying you for, because you're the one who's got to develop Caleb Williams, so you might as well give him what he wants instead of Matt Eberflus continually banging the table for a 3 technique and a left tackle and get none of it, right? So let's actually get the coach what he wants and see if it works.
I think your critiques of Loveland are well-founded, Josh, and I think that a lot of folks, should pay attention to that. What I don't want to hear is pushback against like specific, like just general numbers, right? Like the catches, the receiving yards. Like, they're going to look at that. You're going to look at what Tyler Warren put up and be like, oh my God, Tyler Warren was like this superhuman guy. And granted, you saw him in the college football playoff, and you saw him in games like the USC game just make these just completely bonkers contested catches, and just a freak athlete. And you can tell he played basketball. And I know that's always like a thing with tight ends, but you look at a guy like Colston Loveland and you look at the stats and it's like, yeah, 56 catches, 582 receiving yards. Like, those are really solid numbers. And then you remember the noodle-armed losers who were throwing to him at Michigan. And I wanted to ask Ken this question, like, as soon as they took Colston Loveland, because it like immediately came to me. You look at his numbers, you look at Tyler Warren's numbers. I want to know from you, Ken, with your boy Drew Aller at Penn State, if he had been throwing Colston Loveland the football, I want to know what you think those statistics would have ultimately looked like, because seeing Colston play in games like the Rose Bowl against Alabama, seeing him catch his first career touchdown, I believe it was against Ohio State, and then just the way that he was used in all of these different kinds of schemes, and the way that he presents matchup issues because of that speed and the 6'6" frame. I look at him and I'm really happy with either one of those tight ends, but I really would have loved to have seen the numbers Colston Loveland could have put up if he had played with Drew Aller and not the cast of wackos that he played with his last season in Michigan.
So look, one, anybody not playing at Michigan this year would have done better at Penn State with what Penn State had this season. Like, just because the comp was if we went back the year before Drew Aller was unleashed, basically. So I to me, and I'll go with you on this, James. Don't bring to me Colston Loveland's stats from last season, and also being dinged up too. Don't bring me those stats because JJ McCarthy was gone. But also, this is another thing too. In some ways, compared to just last year, JJ wasn't allowed to let it rip sometimes like Drew was. And they have pulled Drew back. They let Drew go last season. To answer your question, if we switch them out and if you put James, if you put Colston with the Nittany Lions, I think they both would have fed in different ways. But I will say this. I think still to the lack of talent that the Nittany Lions had, and I know you brought in a better offensive coordinator last year. I think they had to take advantage of the things that Ty Warren can do outside of just pass catching. When you could have him at running back and H back and at quarterback, and I think that opened up more things because there were some blips with Drew Aller where he didn't really have. I won't say he may have had a subpar game, but he had games where he didn't. A rising tide rises all ships. He was not that tide. Some games that rose the ships that they needed for them to advance, and some of that, of course, is on James Franklin. A lot of it you could say is on James Franklin, but I think to get to your question, I think Colston would have had a terrific year at Penn State. I don't know if he would have been as good as Ty Warren because I think they may have needed the attributes that Ty Warren brings compared to what Colston brings with being more of a pure pass catch. And I don't want to sit on that because even though he's not like Dallas Clark was with the Colts 25 years ago, like just a guy where it's just like you really are just you're really just a wide receiver. You're not really a tight end whatsoever. I can see that in some years from now, and he may not ever be where you're asking him to be pure inline blocking, but I can see Colston being strong enough to maintain at the line where you need sometimes when you're out there in 12. Again, I'm not upset. This is a question I have for both of you though. We talked about the tackles being gone, and Josh, you said that they should have moved up to get a tackle. With the players that remained on the board at 10, if there was another player outside of the two tight ends that you think the Bears should have went over at 10, James, let's start off with you. Was there anybody that you wanted the Bears to get outside of the tight ends at 10?
I was definitely intrigued if they had wanted to go get Jalen Walker. I know that, Josh, you had brought up, I think it was maybe a little bit of a lack of size with him when we were kind of talking about it. It was, okay, sorry, it was both of you guys. All right, it was both of you guys. I still think that it would have been an upgrade to their pass rush, and I definitely think that with all of the emphasis that they have put on improving in the trenches this offseason, you've seen all the investment they've made in offensive line. They have made several moves on the defensive line as well. I wonder if maybe adding that type of a versatile piece and giving Dennis Allen kind of that guy to kind of work with a little bit. I was honestly curious if maybe a guy like him would have been a good play there just to kind of get that additional pass rush punch. And I did also look a little bit, I think it was Ole Miss's Walter Nolan. I thought that maybe that would have been another intriguing guy. I just kept looking at that defensive line as being like, look, you have now had those 3 offensive tackles go off the board. I think that a good plan B could have been to improve that defensive line just a little bit more through the draft and kind of get a guy you can mold with Dennis Allen at the helm of that defense. That was kind of the direction I was looking. And again, this is not a knock on them going tight end. I see the vision. Ken, or Josh, I think, said you're paying this guy $13 million to coach your offense. If he wants an offensive guy, let him have it. Maybe he could have improved the defense a little bit in that spot, given what was off the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, maybe you look at Michael Williams, but again, I think you're kind of at that 10 spot. Once the tackles are gone, you're kind of in a tough spot because of just the quality of the draft class, right? Like, it's really easy to sit here and say like they need a pass rusher because guess what? They need a pass rusher. But once Abdul Carter's off the board, right, it's such a big gap. It's like, who are you going to take at 10? Now you're moving down. Now you're trying to play this kind of guessing game of like, how far can I move down to get who I want? What if I move down too far and I don't get who I want? Now I'm really in no man's land, right? So you kind of get to a point. Tackles are gone. They obviously like Loveland. So look, I love it, and I think the point that James made about Loveland stats, like just throw that out. Like look at 2023, and what I would just say is over the past 2 years, Colston Loveland has the second most yards per route run in the entire country, behind only Brock Bowers. That tells you how efficient he is, how explosive he is. He's a really, really, really good player. I was texting a scout who I know who's been doing this for a long time, and he just said, "Look, Colston Loveland is the second highest graded tight end I've scouted in my career by Brock Bowers." So. Really, really good player. If you wanted Tyler Warren, I'm not going to knock you. I really like Tyler Warren. I think he's incredible. I I'm just very, very concerned now when you look at the Bears roster. The defensive line is very, very concerning. And like I said, I don't know what they could have done. We'll get into what they're going to do, what they're going to try to do. I think there's a guy from Arkansas who might be coming off the board pretty quickly tomorrow for them, who just screams Dennis Allen. But they've still got some holes to fix. But I think Colston Loveland's is a really good fit.
I do want to say, by the way, everybody wanted the Bears to beat the Packers in the last game of the season. If they hadn't, they would have picked a couple of spots higher. Maybe could have gotten a tackle. I don't know. Be careful what you wish for, guys.
Just imagine if Will Levis hadn't thrown them the game to start the season.
Oh, Mel Kiper going off on Will Levis today was really funny, where he's just like, I don't know if I'm wrong yet. I don't know if I'm wrong yet. That was one of my favorite moments of television.
Oh my goodness. I want to get back to something that James mentioned. And one of the good things about having these discussions, because all of us kind of know a little bit of something, these guys are my insiders. But one of the things that we try to provide is scheme fit from kind of what you know from personnel. And one, this could go back to Ryan Poles. We know if you look at Montez Sweat, that Ryan Poles likes he likes big bodies in general. He's a big body guy, like everywhere. Yeah. So everywhere. It's not just at this position. He looks at bring me some giants. Basically, that's his preference. All right. But when you're talking about what you had with the Saints, right, and the type of players that they have out on the edge. You're talking about guys that are stout and can really set the edge in the run game and aren't just sack guys. Josh, we were having this discussion earlier or whatever, and that's kind of where with James we were kind of like, nah, because when you look at Walker being 6'1", and this is funny because, and now I'm gonna tell you, I'm being a homer on this part. But because last year I was like, yeah, bring me Chop Robinson again. I for some reason like Penn State players. I was like, bring me Chop Robinson. Or look, we were like, Josh and I, bring us Nolan Smith from Georgia, who's also undersized as far as being light. But when you're talking about playing the cover two that Eberflus played, and Eberflus didn't have the 3 technique that he needed, because if he had the 3 technique, you could have perhaps gotten away with having a guy out on the edge that was a little bit lighter, because offenses would have been imploding up front and would have had to focus, let alone with Montez Sweat on the other side. But now when you're talking about Dennis Allen and what he wants to do is where it didn't look like, and also the value. And I know some people will be mad. It was like, if you got a guy, you just go up and get him. You would be so mad if they drafted a player that didn't fit properly in their scheme. And I'll say this, devil's advocate is, you're going to make a player. You're going to find a way to make the player work. But if this player isn't conducive to how your defense works, and it creates a problem up front in your defense, and you brought Dennis Allen in to basically be your defensive head coach, all right, like that's his side of the ball, you need to allow him to do what you already have. And you already have a player who underperformed last year, but it's the style of player that he desires in Montez Sweat. Now to go to who Josh is going to talk about in the second round, who fits the bill, basically, all right, as far as a player on defensive end that they would draft. But then, Josh, is something else that you mentioned that kind of bit me in the butt, and that's the left tackle situation. Because, and you knew the one you knew that Simmons probably was going to be a Chief. All right, like he already had an apartment.